Episode 6, The Cat That Wasn't There. Part 1, The Report. 3 weeks had passed since the Caledonia returned from its resupply mission. For the Horizon, 3 weeks was enough time for another star system to become interesting. Another set of coordinates to appear on the navigation board, and another ancient structure to acquire a preliminary classification. For Angus MacRae, apparently, it had been enough time to write the strangest incident report Amelia Carter had received since the beginning of the expedition. The transmission arrived during the morning watch. Amelia was on the bridge, reviewing a series of astronomical observations with Lyra Sen, when the communications console announced an incoming priority message. Marcus Donnelly looked over from the engineering station. "That'll be MacRae." Amelia glanced at him. "How do you know?" "Because everyone else sends reports electronically." A pause. MacRae sends reports like he's writing to a government department that personally offended him. Lyra smiled faintly. The transmission opened. Angus MacRae appeared on the main display, sitting behind the command console of the Caledonia. He looked tired. Not seriously tired. Just tired in the particular way of a man who had spent several weeks trying to convince himself that something hadn't happened. Behind him, the familiar bulkheads of the cargo vessel were visible. "Commander Carter," he began. "Supplementary report regarding the transit anomaly encountered during our recent supply run." Amelia leaned back. "Here we go." MacRae continued. "The structure appears to have been some form of automated transit hub. Preliminary analysis indicates that it remains partially functional despite an estimated age exceeding 30,000 years. Marcus nodded. "That's actually pretty good." The report continued. The structure identified the Caledonia prior to activation. Lyra looked up. "Identified." MacRae continued reading. Specifically, it transmitted a recognition signal corresponding to the vessel's registry designation. Marcus stopped working. "That's impossible." Amelia raised a hand. "Let's hear the rest." MacRae described the approach, the unexpected activation of the structure, the apparent displacement of the Caledonia across hundreds of light years, and the subsequent return journey. The technical details were remarkably precise. Power fluctuations, navigation errors, temporal discrepancies in the onboard clocks, communications interference, the unusual behavior of the portal. Even the measurements of the electromagnetic field had been carefully documented. Whatever else could be said about Angus MacRae, he knew how to write a technical report. Then came the final paragraph. MacRae paused. His expression changed slightly. The final matter concerns an unregistered domestic animal that was present aboard the Caledonia during the incident. Marcus slowly turned toward Amelia. Lyra's eyebrows rose. MacRae continued. The animal disappeared during transit. Silence on the bridge. Amelia looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Lyra. Lyra looked at the screen. MacRae cleared his throat. "We have been unable to determine whether the animal remained aboard the vessel, was transported elsewhere during the anomaly, or," he hesitated, "was affected by the transit event itself." Another pause. "The animal is a cat." Marcus closed his eyes. Amelia almost smiled. Almost. MacRae finished the report with the same professionalism with which he had begun it. "Given the absence of evidence indicating damage to the vessel, or its crew, I have classified the animal's disappearance as unexplained but non-critical." He looked directly into the camera. "For the record, Commander, I would appreciate it if the Horizon did not circulate this portion of the report." A brief pause, especially to Chief Donnelly. The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent. Marcus was the first to speak. "That's insulting." Lyra turned toward him. "Why?" "Because I would have circulated it responsibly." Amelia looked at him. "Would you?" No, thank you. Marcus returned to his console. Amelia replayed the final section of the transmission. Once, then again. The cat had been aboard the Caledonia for most of the journey. Nobody knew where it had come from. Nobody had officially registered it. It had simply appeared one day and decided that the cargo ship was its home. Then it had vanished during the transit event. Under normal circumstances, Amelia would have classified the incident as an unfortunate but irrelevant detail. But this was not a normal circumstance. There is a recording of the feline aboard the Horizon. The Caledonia had encountered an ancient transit structure. The structure had apparently recognized the ship, and something aboard the ship had disappeared during the process. Amelia stood. Marcus, Lyra, Kael Veyris, who had been working in the archaeological station at the rear of the bridge, looked up. Yes, Commander. My ready room. 10 minutes. Kael glanced at the screen where MacRae's transmission had ended. Does this concern the transit structure? Amelia looked at him. It concerns a cat. Kael stared at her. Marcus stood. That is somehow worse. 10 minutes later, the four of them were gathered around the table in Amelia's ready room. The Caledonia report was displayed between them. Kael had already read the technical sections. He appeared more interested in the structure itself than in the missing animal. Amelia noticed. Your assessment? Kael folded his hands. The transit technology is significant. How significant? Potentially very. Lyra activated several diagrams. The energy signature recorded by the Caledonia is consistent with several Guardian structures we've already documented. Not identical, but related. Marcus leaned forward. How related? Enough that I wouldn't call it coincidence. Amelia studied the diagrams. So the Guardians built transit networks. Apparently, Kael said, though the network appears to have been limited. We have found references to rapid transit corridors in several archives, but nothing suggesting unrestricted movement across the galaxy. Marcus pointed at one of the graphs. This field fluctuation. That's what moved the Caledonia. Probably. Kael gave him a calm look. We have never operated one of these structures. Fair. Lyra enlarged another section. There is something else. Amelia looked at her. The recognition signal. The room became quieter. Lyra continued. The portal did not simply detect the Caledonia. According to MacRae instruments, it generated a response specifically after the ship entered the activation zone. Marcus frowned. Meaning, it recognized something. Kael looked at the data. Or someone. Marcus looked at him. Don't start. Kael ignored him. Guardian technology was capable of identifying biological signatures. We know that from the camouflage systems. But why would a transit hub care about a biological signature? Amelia asked. Kael didn't answer immediately. Lyra did. It might not have. Amelia turned toward her. Explain. The portal may have been looking for something else. The Caledonia may simply have matched a predefined condition. Marcus leaned back. Like a password? Possibly. Then why didn't it activate when our probes scanned the region? Lyra shook her head. We haven't tested that. Not yet. Kael looked toward Amelia. We should. Amelia was already thinking about it. The portal was several days away from their present course. Investigating it would require a minor route deviation. Nothing serious. No operational risk. No fleet order. No strategic necessity. Just a question. And Amelia had learned over the past year that some questions were dangerous precisely because they appeared insignificant. She stood. Set a course. Marcus raised an eyebrow. To the portal. Yes. Lyra looked at her. You're diverting the horizon because of an anomalous transit structure. Amelia considered the question. Not because of the cat. Marcus smiled. Of course not. Amelia ignored him. We have a Guardian transit hub that may still be operational. We have evidence that its network is connected to structures we've already studied. And we have a report suggesting that the system can recognize incoming vessels. She looked at Kael. That's enough reason to investigate. Kael nodded. Agreed. Marcus gathered the data. I'll prepare the sensors. Lyra stood. I'll compare the Caledonia's readings with our existing Guardian database. Amelia looked once more at the final paragraph of MacRae's report. Unregistered domestic animal. She closed the file. One more thing. The others stopped. Amelia looked at them. If we find the cat, Marcus waited. We return it to MacRae. Marcus smiled. That's the first sensible decision anyone's made all morning. The horizon changed course 6 hours later. The adjustment was minor. The destination was not. For the first time since the beginning of their mission, the ship was deliberately following something that had not been left behind by the Guardians. At least not directly. The portal had been encountered by the Caledonia. The horizon was now going to find out why. In the archaeological archive, Kael Veyris began reviewing the old Guardian records. At first, there was nothing unusual. References to transit corridors appeared in several databases. Fragments of maps, maintenance schedules, energy requirements, navigation coordinates. Most were incomplete. Some were thousands of years older than others. The Guardians had apparently maintained several interconnected transit routes for a very long time. Kael began cross-referencing the locations. Lyra joined him. Together, they reconstructed a partial map of the network. It was not large. It did not span the galaxy, but it was deliberate. Specific systems were connected. Some routes had been abandoned. Others appeared to have been deliberately shut down. A few had no known destination. Lyra examined one of the ancient maps. The network changed over time. Kael nodded. Yes. Why? We don't know. She looked at him. You're enjoying this. Kael looked offended. I am not. Lyra waited. Kael returned to the data. Perhaps slightly. She smiled. Then another file appeared. A monitoring archive. Kael opened it. The designation was familiar. Athuria Scientific Station. A station they had visited months earlier. The archive contained routine surveillance records. Corridors, laboratories, storage rooms, crew quarters. Nothing unusual. Kael almost closed the file. Then he noticed something in the corner of one frame. A small orange shape. He stopped. Lyra noticed. What? Kael enlarged the image. The figure became clearer. 4 legs, a tail, triangular ears, striped markings across the back. A cat. Kael stared at the screen. For several seconds, he said nothing. Lyra leaned closer. Is that? Kael did not answer. He enlarged the image again. The animal was walking through a Guardian corridor, apparently unconcerned with the ancient civilization surrounding it. Then it stopped, turned toward the camera, and looked directly into the recording device. Kael checked the archive timestamp. His expression changed. Lyra. Yes. Look at the date. She did. Neither spoke. The recording was approximately 800 years old. Kael slowly sat back. This is impossible. And for perhaps the first time since joining the Horizon, he did not mean that the data was incomplete. He meant that he had no idea what the data meant. Part 2: The Crystals. Kael remained silent for several seconds. The image stayed frozen on the display. An orange cat. A guardian corridor. 39,800 years ago. Selira looked from the screen to Kael. Perhaps the image is corrupted. Kael shook his head. The recording is damaged in several places, but not here. Then the animal may simply resemble the one from the Caledonia. Kael enlarged the image again. The markings. Selira studied them. The same. Very similar. Very similar isn't identical. I know. Kael returned to the original resolution. The cat moved naturally through the corridor. It showed no apparent signs of distress. No restraint. No identification tag. Nothing indicating that it was being transported or studied. It simply belonged there. That was what disturbed Kael most. The Guardians had documented almost everything. Scientific experiments, construction projects, political meetings, educational programs, even ordinary domestic activities. But their surveillance archives were generally focused on security and infrastructure. Animals occasionally appeared in background recordings. That was not unusual. What was unusual was recognizing one. Kael opened another archive. Then another. Selira watched him. What are you looking for? I don't know yet. That usually means you're looking for something dangerous. Not necessarily. Something strange then. Kael paused. That is more accurate. He searched the Guardian database for visual records containing biological classifications. The system returned thousands of images. Most were useless. Plants, livestock, native wildlife, laboratory specimens, companion animals. Kael narrowed the search. Domestic mammals, small quadrupeds, humanoid settlements. The results dropped dramatically. He began opening them one by one. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Then, a second image. Kael stopped. Selira leaned closer. The image came from another installation. Observatory of Zephyr. Estimated date, 100 years ago. The picture showed a Guardian scientist working at a large observation console. And on the edge of the desk, almost hidden behind a data crystal, sat an orange cat. Kael stared. Selira said nothing. Kael opened the first image again. Then the second. He placed them side by side. The markings were remarkably similar. Same orange coat. Same darker stripes. Same pale coloration around the muzzle. Even the proportions appeared nearly identical. Selira finally spoke. That is unusual. Kael nodded. Very. Could Guardian settlements have domesticated a local species? Certainly. And several generations later, another animal could have inherited similar characteristics. Possible. Then perhaps this isn't significant. Kael looked at her. You don't believe that? No. Neither do I. He opened a third archive. 2 hours later, the archive room had become a mess of data projections. Kael and Selira had expanded the search far beyond their original parameters. They were no longer looking for cats. They were looking for the same pattern. A small animal. Orange fur. Dark stripes. Pale muzzle. Similar proportions. The search produced 7 additional records. The first came from the Central Archive of Kael'thir. Estimated date, 700 years ago. The image showed a vast storage chamber filled with rows of crystalline data repositories. At first, there was nothing unusual. Then Kael zoomed in. On top of one of the shelves between 2 storage containers, an orange cat was sleeping. Selira stared. That's 3. Kael nodded. 3. The next record came from observation platform Delta 9. Estimated date, 200 years ago. The image showed the exterior observation deck and the planet below. Kael initially thought the cat was inside the station. Then he realized it wasn't. The animal was sitting on the exterior surface of the structure, beyond the pressure boundary. No suit, no protective enclosure, no indication of environmental protection. Celira stood perfectly still. How? Kael enlarged the image. The cat was unmistakable. It was sitting outside the station, apparently looking toward the planet below. Kael checked the station's specifications. Atmosphere outside, vacuum. Celira nodded. Temperature, -112 degrees Celsius. Radiation, high enough that an unprotected biological organism would be dead within seconds. Neither spoke. Kael stared at the image. Finally, Celira said, "Perhaps the recording isn't showing what we think it is." Kael looked at her. Meaning, a projection, a reflection, a sensor artifact. Kael examined the data. The camera recorded visible spectrum imagery. Could be an optical artifact. It was captured on 3 separate sensor systems. Celira went quiet. Kael opened the technical report for Delta 9. There was no mention of a biological anomaly. No emergency. No maintenance report. No reference to an animal outside the station. Nothing. The cat was simply there. And apparently, nobody had considered it important enough to mention. The next record was from a Guardian city. Nix. Estimated date, 3,500 years ago. The image showed a crowded street. Hundreds of Guardians were participating in what appeared to be a ceremonial procession. Kael recognized the architecture from previous archaeological studies. The event was probably connected to a political transition or religious observance. He searched the accompanying records. The ceremony had been extensively documented. Speeches, music, historical commentary, personal accounts. The cat appeared in none of them, but it was visible in the image. At the edge of the street, watching the procession, Kael zoomed in. The cat was looking directly toward the central platform. Celira frowned. Again, yes, it appears to be watching. Kael said nothing. They moved to the next record. Proction Research Station, 280 years ago. A laboratory. Several Guardians were conducting an experiment involving a large energy containment system. And on the floor beside one of the consoles, the cat. Kael stared at it. Celira looked at the date, then at the previous images. That's not possible. Kael nodded. Correct. She pointed toward the screen. It would have to be the same individual. We don't know that. Look at the markings. I have. The pattern is almost exact. Almost. She looked at him. You're being deliberately difficult. I am being scientifically accurate. Celira smiled. I know. Kael continued. The 7th record came from somewhere they knew very well. The Sanctuary of Silent Skies. The planet from their 2nd episode. The Protected Civilization. The Guardian station that had remained hidden for 40,000 years. The archive was approximately 250 years old. The image showed the planet's surface. A Guardian settlement stood in the distance. Local inhabitants were gathered around a small group of Guardian representatives, and sitting on a stone wall nearby. The cat. Kael felt something change in his expression. This was no longer amusing. The animal had appeared at another Guardian installation, thousands of years after the earlier records. Thousands of light years, or at least many systems, away from some of them. And it had apparently been present during a significant interaction between the Guardians and the local civilization. Selira whispered, 7. Kael corrected her. 8. She looked at him. The Caledonia. Selira nodded. The Caledonia. Kael opened the report from MacRae. The description was brief. Orange coat. Dark stripes. Pale markings. Unregistered. Missing after transit. Kael looked back at the 8 images. Then he noticed something. He enlarged the oldest image. Then the newest. He compared the position of the ears, the shape of the muzzle, the stripe arrangement, the tail. His expression hardened. Selira noticed. What? Kael didn't answer. What did you find? He displayed the biometric comparison. The software calculated morphological similarity. The result was extraordinarily high. Selira stared at the number. That's... Yes. Could the database be matching the same source image? No. Could the cameras have been calibrated incorrectly? No. Could the Guardians have used artificial overlays? Kael shook his head. Different recording systems. Different installations. Different periods. Different image formats. Selira looked at him. Then what are we looking at? Kael leaned back. I don't know. It was the most honest answer he could give. There was one more image. Kael had not noticed it because it was buried inside a damaged archive. The installation was unidentified. The date was approximately 50 years ago. That date immediately caught his attention. 5,000 years. Long after the Guardians had disappeared. Kael opened the fragment. A room appeared. Empty. No furniture. No equipment. No occupants. Just a bare chamber. The recording lasted 23 seconds. Nothing happened. Kael almost closed it. Then at the far end of the room, something moved. An orange cat walked into view. It stopped, looked around, then turned toward the recording device. It stared directly into the camera. For several seconds, Kael didn't move. Selira didn't either. The cat then walked out of frame. The room was empty again. Kael checked the metadata. 5,000 years. Selira whispered, the Guardians had been gone for 35,000 years. Approximately. And yet the cat was there. Yes. Who was operating the station? We don't know. Who maintained the camera? We don't know. Why was the recording still active? We don't know. Selira looked at him. And where did the cat come from? Kael closed the file. We don't know. Silence. Kael opened one last recording from the horizon. The image was unmistakable. The orange cat was sitting on the command deck, looking directly at the navigation display. The timestamp matched MacRae's report. But something bothered him. Who saw it? He asked. Selira looked at him. What do you mean? The cat. Who actually saw it aboard the horizon? Selira checked the crew reports. Nobody. Kael frowned. Nobody. No one reported seeing an animal on the command deck. Kael checked the ship's access logs. No doors had opened. No movement had been recorded in the corridor. The environmental sensors had detected nothing unusual. There was only the recording. Kael stared at the image. So we have a recording of a cat that nobody saw. Selira was silent. Kael looked at the timestamp again. That shouldn't be possible. Selira answered quietly. Apparently we're collecting those. Then Selira said something that neither of them had considered before. Kael, he looked up. What if we're asking the wrong question? What question should we ask? She pointed toward the images. We keep asking how the cat survived. Kael waited. Perhaps we should ask why the Guardians never tried to remove it. Kael looked back at the archive. That was indeed a better question. The Guardians were meticulous. They documented their cities, their sciences, their migrations, their failures and their discoveries. They recorded everything they considered important. Yet nowhere in their archives was there a warning about the animal. No quarantine order, no containment protocol, no scientific classification, no indication that the creature was considered dangerous. Quite the opposite. The cat appeared to have been simply accepted, as though it belonged there. Kael opened the images again. Athuria, Zephyr, Kael'thur, Delta 9, Nyx, Proxion, the Sanctuary of Silent Skies, the Unknown Station. 8 appearances, thousands of years apart. And then the Caledonia. Kael looked at the last report again. The cat had disappeared during transit. For the first time, the connection occurred to him. Perhaps the transit event had not caused the disappearance. Perhaps it had caused something else. Perhaps the cat had simply used the portal. He immediately rejected the thought. There was no evidence. None. It was speculation. Nothing more. Kael stood. We need to tell Amelia. Selira nodded. Immediately. Kael looked once more at the oldest image. Yes. He paused, then added, before Marcus finds out. Selira smiled. Why? Because he will make jokes. And Kael looked at her with complete seriousness. This is not a joke. Selira glanced at the screen, at the orange cat staring directly at them from 39,800 years ago. No, she said quietly. I don't think it is. Part 3: The Pattern. Kael did not immediately take the findings to Amelia. Selira watched him reopen the archive. You said we needed to tell her. We do. Then why are we still here? Kael looked at the images surrounding them. We know the animal appeared repeatedly. He closed the images. Now I want to know whether the Guardians knew. Selira understood. They were no longer searching for the cat. They were searching for references to it. Kael began with the Zephyr Observatory. Maintenance records, security reports, biological inventories, environmental logs. The Guardians had been meticulous. They had documented insects entering laboratories, animals damaging storage systems, and even minor wildlife disturbances around observation stations. But there was nothing about an orange cat. Selira frowned. So they never noticed it. That's what I thought. Kael changed the search parameters. Instead of searching for biological classifications, he searched for references to presence. The archive returned several damaged records. He opened the first. A fragment of text appeared. Kael reconstructed the translation. Resident animal remains present within observation sector. Selira stared at the screen. Resident animal. Kael nodded. The record is from Zephyr. And the date, 38,100 years ago. The same period as the image. Selira looked at the cat sitting on the observation console. They knew. Apparently. Did they try to remove it? Kael searched the remainder of the document. A second phrase appeared. No intervention required. Selira was silent. So they knew it was there. Yes. And they didn't consider it a problem. Apparently not. Why? Kael looked at the image. I don't know. They searched the Sanctuary of Silent Skies next. This time, they found something even stranger. A maintenance notation. Only 3 words had survived. Observer presence confirmed. Selira leaned toward the display. Observer. Kael examined the surrounding text. The document concerned atmospheric monitoring and planetary protection. There was no Guardian personnel assignment associated with the notation. No Guardian observer is listed, he said. Celira looked at the image of the orange cat sitting on the stone wall. Could it mean the animal? It could. Could it mean something else? Yes. She smiled slightly. You really dislike conclusions. I dislike unsupported conclusions. Fair enough. Kael searched for the next line. It was partially damaged, but the final words remained readable. No action required. Celira looked at him. Again. Kael nodded. Again. The two records were separated by thousands of years and different installations. But both suggested the same thing. The Guardians had encountered the animal. They had noticed it, and they had chosen not to interfere. Amelia was in the science briefing room when Kael arrived. Lyra was already there. Marcus entered a moment later carrying coffee. He looked at Kael. You said this couldn't wait. It can't. Marcus, Saturday. That usually means something exploded. Nothing exploded. Marcus sighed. One day. Amelia ignored him. What did you find? Kael activated the display. He did not show the photographs first. He displayed the two archival references. Resident animal remains present within observation sector. And observer presence confirmed. Lyra read them carefully. What are these? Guardian maintenance records. Do they refer to the cat? We can't prove that. Marcus looked at the first line. Resident animal. Then at Kael. That's remarkably vague. Which is why we can't assume. Amelia studied the second record. Observer. Yes. Any Guardian assigned to that location? No, Lyra looked at the image from the sanctuary. The cat was there. Yes. But that doesn't establish that the word refers to it. No, Marcus took a sip of coffee. So we're back to not knowing. Kael nodded. Exactly. Marcus smiled. Good. I was beginning to worry. Amelia turned toward Kael. What do we know for certain? Kael answered carefully. The animal appears in multiple Guardian records, separated by thousands of years. He changed the display. The morphology is remarkably consistent. Another image. We cannot establish that it is the same individual. Another. Some appearances occur in environments where an ordinary biological organism should not survive. The Delta 9 recording appeared. And now we have evidence that the Guardians were aware of at least one unexplained animal in their installations. He displayed the two archival references again. And they did not consider its presence a threat. Lyra looked at the records. That's significant. Yes. Amelia remained silent. Then she asked, and the Caledonia? Kael brought up MacRae's report. The cat disappeared during transit. The Horizon recording appeared beside it. And now we have another recording aboard the Horizon. Marcus leaned forward. Nobody saw it. Kael nodded. No crew member reported seeing the animal. Environmental sensors. Nothing. Access logs. Nothing. Marcus looked at the image. So we have a cat that appears in the camera system without apparently being aboard the ship. Kael corrected him. We have an image of a cat that we cannot explain. Marcus considered this. That's less fun. It is more accurate. Unfortunately, Amelia looked at the navigation display. The portal was still several days away. Kael, she said, do you believe the transit event caused the disappearance? I don't know. Do you believe the cat used the portal? Kael hesitated. It is possible. Evidence? None. Amelia nodded. Then it's a hypothesis. Yes. Lyra looked at the portal data. We could investigate whether the transit event produced any anomalous readings. Can we determine whether an object could have emerged somewhere other than the expected destination? Amelia asked. Possibly. Then do it. Lyra nodded. Kael looked back at the Guardian records. I also want access to the remaining archives. For what? References to observers, resident animals, unexplained biological presence, anything the Guardians considered normal but never explained. Amelia nodded. Do it. Kael began shutting down the display. Amelia stopped him. Leave the image. Kael looked at her. The cat? Yes. He left the screen illuminated. The orange animal stared silently from the ancient recording. Amelia studied it. We don't know what it is. No. We don't know how it survived. No. We don't know whether it's the same animal. No. She looked at the Guardian records. But we now know one thing. Kael waited. They knew. Kael nodded. And whatever they knew, Amelia continued, they didn't consider it a reason to be afraid. The room fell silent. Marcus looked at the image. That's either reassuring or deeply concerning. Nobody answered. Beyond the horizon, the portal waited. And for the first time, the crew had a reason to wonder whether they were following a mystery, or whether the mystery had been following them all along.